Hello, hello, and you are very welcome to the ErdTrees Favor podcast, where we talk about PvP stuff not only from Elden Ring but also from across the Soulsborne library. And we have a colourful crew in today. We have, of course, starting off, of course, Restless Mind, who an invader person from Elden Ring. I don't know much else about your background, unfortunately, Restless. Care to describe yourself and introduce yourself to our wonderful audience here?
Well, I used to be kind of a casual invader in Dark Souls 3.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed that game a lot, but I joined the community rather late. I think it was about 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And I pretty much only started tryharding when Elden came out.
Not so bad.
So I am a PvP streamer, mostly invasions. I mostly do invasions around the meta level.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And yeah, you came in as a recommendation, reached out to some people, and because unfortunately I'm pretty out of the invader scene loop completely for Elden Ring, and you got some pretty high praise, so I'm very excited to have you in, Restless. And then, of course, I don't think he needs much of an introduction, the powerful poking partisan man himself, Saint Riot, the founder of
Good afternoon.
BigRunes.com himself, and welcome in,
BigRunes.com.
Saint. Welcome in, Saint. It's
Thank you for having me.
good to have you in. And is there anything I missed in my introduction that you'd like to fill the rest of us in with?
No, you did a good job. I started doing invasions I started doing invasions in Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2, but it was never anything like I was just sort of casually doing them, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And when Dark Souls 3 came out, I was like, all right, I'm going to be here with a good internet connection, able to play this at the start of the game with everybody else, like when the whole community is like doing this at the same time. This will be awesome. This will be the first time I get to do that. So I did that, absolutely loved it. You know, basically like learned by doing, sort of like, you know, I, I was like pretty try hard, going through that early phase of Dark Souls 3, and in waiting for the next game to come out, which would end up being Elden Ring. We just so happened to get like a Dark Souls remaster, so I went back and I learned how to do like PvP in Dark Souls remastered and did a bunch of invasions there. And we had this like month where Bloodborne was free on the PlayStation, and so I took that opportunity to like, make a character at like invader range in Bloodborne and go do invasions in Bloodborne and like try that out. And during the Return to Drink Lake event, like go back and play some Dark Souls 2 and do some invasions in Dark Souls 2, and then the Demon Souls remake. So I got a chance to, like, I started at Dark Souls 3 and sort of made my way backwards, trying all this other PvP. Mostly invasions. Like, no,
Yeah, awesome.
99% invasions. But now I do Elden Ring, and I enjoy it. I think I'm probably the most happy I can be.
An easier task said than done sometimes, considering what some of those ganks can look like. But moving on then, we do of course have probably one of the best fishers in Dark Souls 3 that still occasionally plays, of course, Sara. Sara is, of course, a speedrunner for Sekiro, and has been a friend of mine for a good long while. So it's good to have them in. Sara, is there anything I'd missed, or how are you feeling about that introduction? A bit light there.
Well, I mean, I'm surprised you left out the whole like cheating lag versus 2 FPS thing, but other than that, I guess that's a good enough introduction. Yeah.
And then, of course, another blast from the past here, the Dropout Dragon, of course, starting all the way back in Demons, and moving his way up until being a tournament participant and very fine competitive player in Dark Souls 2. But we thought he'd now turned into Twink Invader at RL15. Sorry. So, Dragon, is there anything I left out of my introduction there that?
Well, I think you could have emphasized the washed up has been used to be somebody a little bit more, but we could go with that.
Bitter about
I've been
it
in
at the end. Yeah,
yeah,
that
very
works.
the very bitter anti FromSoft. Been doing this too long. 12 years is too long. I want to get out of here. I don't want to be here kind of guy. Definitely. I've been in and out of the tournament scene since 2012, but didn't actually enter the community proper until 2014, where I spent most of my PvP time in Dark Souls 2, a little bit of the early years of 3, which was a nightmare for most 3-oids, can at least agree on that. And I've been around the block on invading and dueling for a very long time. So do not expect a positive opinion from me on damn near any subject concerning a FromSoft game. So let's have fun with it.
Well, we're not going to get into arguments about Bloodborne just yet to have the entire audience rebel and throw things. But we, of course, have this cast here. They're from a very diverse background, and one of the things we try to do here is to try and have the conversations and look at all of the differing perspectives on the game. I, of course, am a competitive duelist, or at least was, before I, too, was washed up. And I've always looked with fascination and horror at the invasion scene, so I got this crew of invader folks in to pick their brains. But before we do that, let's just take a quick look at the future events that are going to be happening in the Soulsborne and Elden Ring community. Of course, as we had mentioned last time, there was, of course, the Prepare to Die events that have been going on in the anticipation for Dasman's $600 tournament in Prepare to Die. Of course, just recently, just 10 days ago, Badman Chief and Moby had their first 10. Badman Chief having a very strong lead and then slowly but surely managing to claw it back. And it was initially supposed to be a first to 10, but they turned it into a first to 20. Sometimes it happens, and Badman Chief won by about 5 points in the end of that. Of course, the $600 tourney is going to be over at Dasman's. He's doing an absolute service for that community, hosting all the events, so GG to him. For Bloodborne, there's no upcoming events, unfortunately. However, just recently, there was the Endaccord World Tour heading over to Europe, which is, of course, was hosted here in Insomnia, took out Uncle Waka. Insomnia, of course, a phenomenal player, and both of them put on one hell of a show in that one. And looking at the DS3 and DS2, there's no events planned, but at least for DS2, I believe the B-Dubs and Brenna do have some stuff cooking, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And we'll keep you posted on what comes out there. And now, as I look frantically at my notes at the... My God, Elden Ring's been busy for the last couple of weeks. It's been the opener for the Patch 1.0 tournaments that have been happening recently. Of course, the FOC warm-up happened with the Dark Soap versus Raw Skills cross-region tournament, with Dark Soap very handily taking that victory there. And then the FOC for EU and NA over the Duelist Event Network. It was, of course, going to be for EU, Space Ranger versus Whitnick, Space winning on the PSGS. And, of course, in the NA, Bevan beating Raw Skills. I believe it was another PSSS versus... Great power stance, great spears. Who'd thunk it that some of the two best setups in the game will be in both of the finals. And then for yesterday, which was of course the Ape Station crowd, the PSN community, just recently had their tournament, and it was Frosty versus Raskills, and the Fists managed to take the victory against the Who Does That players' menagerie of setups. So I didn't quite hear about what's going on in the box, but if anyone in the audience has any ideas to what was going on there, we'll fill them in. But I know that they do have events planned in the future, and same with the ERPVP later on this month as well. So that is more or less the roundup of the events. There wasn't all that many, so I think we'll crack on with the interrogation of the invader people as to what on earth that's all about. So again, for context, I don't invade. I have one non-twinked character at about 15 just to see what it's all about in pretty much all of the games, bar 2, I think, and Bloodborne, simply for the fact that they don't really have natural invasions all that often, that low all that often. But I suppose then for the first question and how we're going to carry on with this, it's how do you all kind of approach invasions in terms of both like the mindset, and then from your mindset, how does that affect the build making that you do get in on? And I think we'll go to the Dropout Dragon first for this one. So how does your mindset when going into invasions, Dodd, and how does that affect build making and other priorities that you'd make in an invasion?
Well, when you're trying to understand, depending on which game you're playing, we're gonna go with ER just at the moment.
Yeah.
Build making really for invasions is what are you going to take in that's going to keep it interesting for you, but at the same time have a strong enough gimmick to where you can just kind of pull that out and win the invasion. You need to carry that big stick in the back of your pocket at any point in time. And I mostly make characters around the idea that I'm going to mess with you for as long as possible until I get bored and press that button. And ER lets us do that with weapons like Dragon Halberd or jumping L1s on some big hammer, whichever. And knowing that it's kind of a war of attrition between you and the three other guys. And of course, I'm also making my build around the idea that I'm trying to kill the summons first before I kill the host, or it's just not that fun to me. It's more of the challenge of the invasion itself, because I do like to duel, which is challenging in of itself. But with invasions, when you're running against three guys who have no idea what they're doing, they can still blender you, and you need to be able to pull something out. So mostly my builds revolve around some big, powerful gimmick that I've got in my back pocket. It's not the main feature, but it's definitely something that surprises them. This new patch that has happened recently has only increased the danger of something blendery like that from both sides, both the hosts and the summons themselves. So I always try to realize that, he's got more healing than I do. I've got probably more damage than he does because I've thought about it. I'm not just testing through weapons on their playthrough. I know what my plan is. I'm going to space them out. I'm going to think them out, and I have to use weapons that work for that. Halberds are good for that. Poking weapons are good for that. Anything that keeps them on their toes while kind of drifting in and out of the fight and watching what they do and how they react. You have to build around that. And running something that's like a pure mage build or a pure strength build or something may not give you all the opportunities you need to do that. So keeping it varied is the best idea that I try to go with.
Okay, and a very interesting perspective there, and I'm probably going to pick your brains later on about the differences between the games in terms of that. But restless, from your perspective, then I'll repeat the question. And how do you approach an invasion when you get in world in terms of both your mindset, and then how does that have the effect on builds that you make then as a result?
Oh, well, I'll have to agree with a lot of what Dropout said. You do indeed have to have something that is going to be effective against a spammy gang in your inventory, whatever build you're using. So personally, I am what you would call a tryhard invader, right? So I mostly use meta or sub-meta setups. I make my builds around the main damaging stat that is like, for example, dexterity or faith or dex strength, which is quality. Yeah, and like PSSS, PSGS, PSS, fists, whatever else. Usually, all of these can be found in my inventory. I mostly use that kind of stuff, but also try to have a few like fun weapons on the side, a few gimmicks, if you will. I also like swaps. I tend to swap a lot, so I try to sometimes come up with stuff that can work in a given situation.
You're kind of on your feet always, maybe moving between setups then to give you that slight edge that you're going to have in any given engagement. Then you're flexible with your approach, I guess, is kind of what you're getting at in terms of the swaps.
Yep. It concerns not only setups but also Ashes of War, because this is a big thing that is different from the previous games
Yeah,
in this series, that you can put different ashes on certain weapons, and that allows you, among other things, to swap seamlessly without your opponent seeing the swap coming. So that can be super useful in invasions. And the duels, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the swapping universal that really kind of took off more so in Dark Souls 3 has definitely come into its own very much so in Elden Ring. There's a lot going on. But moving on then to the Saratoga. Obviously, you have a very different approach compared to most, especially given that in Dark Souls 3 you were known for the fishing. But how does that, the same go and then it goes again, how do you kind of approach invasions with your mindset, and then what's your mindset, and how do your builds look then as a result to reflect that?
So if we're talking about like PS3, which is like the game that I play, um, I don't know. I guess I try to backstab people. You know, I'm one of those filthy lag stab fishers. So, you know, I always like to keep that soft swap dagger in my back pocket. And I tend to use like spears and halberds and or things with like low hit stun that people tend to like roll in to or like aggress on a little bit too much. Yeah, that's kind of about it. Unless we're talking about my very short-lived Elden Ring Bulgoat Vikes days.
I think you know what, go for it. What was your approach when you were...
My approach was to be as BG as possible. I wanted to... I just wanted to be as mean as possible while I had the chance before everything got patched. And once it did get patched, I uninstalled the game. So
that's more than fair.
That was my Elden Ring career.
I think there's definitely there's an awful lot with very similar attitudes, although I see them slowly but surely, like the cockroaches under the fridge, slowly skittering back in after all the time away. But Saint, you and I think you and I have very different approaches, and I think you'll have a very interesting perspective when it comes to the invasions and setup. So how, what is your approach, and how does that affect the builds that you have, and how, in terms of even making the builds in the first place?
It's very similar to what DOD said. Basically, like, winning is more fun than losing. So I will try to win. But I have, like, a part of the fun for me is to, like, make this character. So, like, and I'm going to say this while acknowledging that every character I have uses a straight sword. Okay, so I acknowledge this. But every character is sort of like built around, like, okay, this is a Carrion Knight sorcery guy, so I'm going to use Carrion Knight sorceries. I'm going to have like all the best stuff I can have for Carrion Knight sorceries. I'm going to try and make Carrion Knight sorceries as efficient as possible, but I'm still stuck with all of the the downsides of being a Carrion Knight sorcerer guy. And then pyro guy and lightning guy and madness guy and sneaky guy. So I just make all these different builds, and they have these limitations, like just parts where they are just going to lose and fail, and I just sort of say GG and I lose. But essentially, same thing DOD said. Like, when you're invading. When I was like a try-hard invader back in like Dark Souls 3, it was like I used to tell people, like, because everybody was complaining about invasions in Dark Souls 3 when that game first came out. Everybody was like, it's way too hard. There's too many ganks. They just resummon their phantoms. They can heal too much. Yada yada. So like my go-to thing was like, just kill the host. Just simply kill the host, and it's over, and you win. Like, I know that that's like easier said than done, but like, find a moment to kill the host, and you win. But as I've done invasions for like, however many years at this point, like, yeah, I'm gonna kill all the phantoms now. Like, that's part of the fun. Like, if I can find a way to do that, that's interesting to me. And like back in Dark Souls 3, I would sword and board until my opponent started to retreat, and now I'm going to chase you with a spear or whatever, and I'm just going to constantly harass you as you run, and try and finish you off that way. And now it's more of like, okay, I'm gonna cast these spells and use the sword or whatever, and then when you run, I'm going to try and have to figure out a way to beat you with You know, like I'm chasing after you with Carrion Slicer, or I'm chasing after you with Catch Flame, or whatever. And that sort of became like, that's not as fun. So what I want to happen is like Aval of Haima on a wake up into Carrion Greatsword, true combos into Straight Sword R1, and then Carrion Piercer as the roll catch to kill. Like that's what I want. That's what I'm after. I am just constantly like trying to seek out like this does this, combos into this, does this, does this. So I'm like looking for like these cool cinematic finishes now at this point. It's more just like what arbitrary challenge can I put on myself? And it's a lot of fun. I don't want it to sound like, because it rules. Like it rules to try and do all this stuff. Like you have this expansive knowledge of the game, you know. A Dragon Claw can combo into Bloodflame Talon on a bad roll, can combo into literally anything in the game. So like Dragon Claw into Bloodflame Talon into whatever. Like that's fun. That's cool. It looks great. It makes a good YouTube clip. And so that's
yeah, and
that's what I do.
that's the thing as well. It's like having fun with it, I suppose, because unfortunately, to a certain degree, it does sometimes feel like it is press L1 4 times, they made a bad read and now they're dead. Sometimes can be it, which isn't satisfying for you, and it's most certainly not satisfying from them. But it is definitely it's an interesting approach, and like you said, the cinematic kind of look to it is kind of cool as well. Like looking at it like I'm trying to make a montage or whatever, to but with all the bits left in. That's kind of an interesting way of looking at it. But we'll open the floor if anyone has said anything interesting, ladies, of here that you'd like to chime in on or agree with or talk about. Please, by all means, now is your opportunity to do it.
Well, I'd say that the perfect John is, what I said before. I like to kill the summons before I kill the host. So, if you fail at that, you can always say, if I had just focused the host earlier, I would have won that invasion. You can all John and feel really good about that at the end of it. So that's a prime A tactic to approach invasions.
Win-win right there, baby.
It's absolutely a win-win. So you can do that at home. Very easy.
If I'm gonna be honest, I feel like it's been the opposite for me. I've always tried to kill the phantoms first, but Elden Ring is just such a game that can punish you really hard for playing with your food,
Oh, absolutely. You make that mistake, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel it real bad. The blender is there, especially when they have the healing advantage.
Yep, the resummoning, the blenders, the hunter covenant. Well, it's not really a covenant, but whatever it is,
We'll have to get a change.org here to do something about the influx of blues. It's getting a little bit insane. That's I really don't know what they were thinking with the having like just a constant, because there mustn't be enough hosts getting blues, right? That must be what's going on. That every time you kill one, just another one pops up out of the ether. It's very strange.
There was I've worked that out. I know what's happening there.
Mm-hmm.
A similar thing happened back in Dark Souls 3 with I remember all the patch notes and stuff, and I remember when this happened. No one could get summoned as a blue in Dark Souls 3, and then people found out that you were more likely to get summoned as a blue the older your copy of the game was, basically.
What?
The earlier you had bought the game, the more likely you were to get summoned as a blue or something insane like that. I'll be totally honest. I fucking hate blues. I don't pay attention. But what happens in invasions is you have 4 slots that are open for like multiplayer.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got Phantom, like let's say that's what you run into because that's what you can, right? You can't invade and be the only invader and run into blues. That's not going to happen. So you've got host Phantom. You kill a Phantom, right? That Phantom slot is sort of like an unoccupied nebulous thing at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably going to get a blue in. That blue takes that Phantom's slot, and there goes like a slot. Okay, then you kill the other Phantom. All right, now another blue appears. That's the other blue slot, right? And they've sort of like taken over these Phantom slots. All right, compare that to You have a guy, he's got a phantom, you kill his phantom, he runs back to summon the phantom, and the game tells him you cannot summon a phantom, whatever. It has a little pop-up. Unable to summon phantom, or whatever. Unable to summon furled finger, whatever it's called. That's the game's like cooldown timer, which is a thing that they had to introduce in Dark Souls 3. They introduced it way too late, but like, and it still wasn't great. But essentially, like, what's happening is you have these four nebulous co-op slots, and they can be like timed out. If you kill 2 blues, you're not going to see another blue for 5 minutes.
Okay.
If you kill a phantom and you kill a phantom and then you kill another phantom and then you kill another phantom, that host can't summon that phantom back for like 5 minutes. But what they can do is they can summon in 2 blues in that period. So like,
see. I understand.
Right.
Now.
You're constantly being barraged with like, there's no, they don't have the same cooldown timer, the phantoms and the blues. They work on opposite cooldown timers, because if they worked on the same cooldown timer, no one would ever get a blue.
No one would ever get a blue. That's interesting. And I think that has an effect then as well of, I think Restless was kind of alluding to it. It's like you kind of have to kill whoever you can as quickly as you can. I guess is kind of to summarize your point, Restless, because number one, they have high damage options, and number two, like, that blue's coming in unless the gank is being very, very kind and hasn't blues turned on, which is, I find, very unlikely considering some of those ganks are mean. Those ganks are real mean.
That's why you got to do the point tech, man. I'm telling you, 80% of the time it works. It is one of the funniest things. You walk into a gank, you look at them, and there's that one brief moment where everybody's kind of looking at each other, like, how is this fight going to happen? Are they just going to start spamming on me? Are they running at me? Are they rushing me? Are they going to the enemies? Whichever. If they're all looking at you, just point at one of the summons. Emote point. I'm not kidding. Give them the Biden blast, the Joe Biden point. You give them that, and they are probably in a Discord call, and they'll go, "Oh, he wants to fight you," and they 1v1 you 80% of the time. This has been going on since 2014. It's been hilarious, and I have run into ganks where I take a quick look and I'm going, "Uh-oh, that dude's way over leveled or whatever. This is going to be a struggle. Let me just point at one of them and see what happens." Then they just one by one they will fight you, and you just kind of laugh about it, and you're going to win. And that way you can secretly be like, "Yeah, I'm good," even though you would have lost that game 100%. You would have been like, "Yeah, I did it," when you would have absolutely lost that gang. I'm telling you, it works almost. Luber was going crazy when he saw it. And was like, this is some Reddit honor shit, like, what is this? And I'm like, listen, I've been doing this a long time. It's just it's my backup. And then Luber started doing it just to see at meta level, and people were doing it. They would just fight him. So if you run into a gank, you're not sure about what to do, just point at him. It works. I'm telling you.
The only thing, like, you're not wrong, but we have to acknowledge the fact that gankers have this thing where, so like in Dark Souls 3 you had the spells Tears of Denial, and in Demon Souls you had Second Chance, right? Gankers have that. It's a built-in, my buddy is in Tearstone range, and all of them gank you immediately. They're like, wait, he's gonna lose, and then they all jump in.
That can happen. Sure, that can happen, and it's funny. But then you get to John about that and be like, "Oh, he beat me in the back.
Couldn't take it. Couldn't handle the L.
Yeah. I'm too cool and I'm too special. They had to jump me. They're playing demons. This is bullshit, and I win. And the moral victory is much more important than anything else. So we'll just take that." And then chat's like, "Yeah, definitely, streamer. I agree with you. So you're good to go. You could be happy with that." But as a regular player, I'm telling you, give it a shot and be surprised how often that actually works. It feels dumb. Like you see it happening in front of you, and you're like, "There's no way." Oh, yeah, here we go. And if you're good enough, you can kill them before even the guys jump into the fight.
Yeah.
And you still win that moral victory if they jump into it going, "Uh-oh." And I love it was like maybe 3 months ago, maybe I did the point tech. It worked. And then I got the hate mail message afterwards that said, "We should have ganked your twinking ass." And it was so good. I was so happy. And I was like, "GG, yeah." Like, just
Oh my god.
Honestly, that sounds like such an OP tech. I should definitely start using it as well.
I'm telling you.
Yeah,
It's
if
the
you're- if
Biden
you're-
blast.
If your back is like up against the wall, regardless, and you're like, this is going to be hard to win, close to impossible, like, fuck it, just try that.
Yeah, and ever since too, you've been able to cancel your emotes. So what do you have to lose? Just give it a shot. They ain't gonna hit you while you're doing it.
Okay, I'm taking notes, lads. This is. I can confirm. I can 100% confirm. Luber has said it works. He has. I sent those messages. It was like, there's no way, dude. And he's like, Yahweh, it does in fact do the job, and he is enamored. I think that one VC dot, he did nothing but say the word Biden blast.
Biden blast, dude.
On loop
Over and over.
You can't bow, though.
No.
You can't bow, because
No,
then they'll
never.
think it's funny to kill you. You have
No,
to point,
never.
because it's got a little bit of edge to it. Like,
Yeah, you gotta point at him.
And-
You.
yeah, right. They respect that, because they
Yeah.
also watch anime. So they're
Sure.
like, I have been chosen this day to do battle.
I got this, dude. You know they're saying it in Discord. Right? It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
dude, I'm like level 300, man. This guy doesn't even know. He's probably like close to. Dude, this is he's spam poking, spam. Okay, all right. What, dude? Jump in. This guy's cheating. That's every time. Every time, you know that's how that's going.
Well, that's a good
It's
segue,
amazing.
actually. What setups are you kind of are you kind of enamored with at the moment? We'll keep it open for this one. But like, what setups are you all rocking for your invasions this weather? Even in DS3, Sarah.
I will get mine out of the way because it's real quick, real simple. 4-prong plow, soft swap dagger. That's it.
The Mockfell get up, is it?
Yeah, that's all.
Okay, and then yourself, then Restless. What have you been? What setups have you been really rocking?
I think I've been a PSSS enjoyer for the longest time, but lately I've been using, like, trying out different stuff.
Okay, and has the patch kind of encouraged that, or is it just kind of just?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, as much as there is a lot of issues with the latest patch, I do like that it made a lot of setups that weren't really viable before strong and even competitive. Like one-handed light weapons is something that you wouldn't be able to use efficiently before 1.10.
No, for sure.
So like straight sword off stock GS3 style is very much viable.
Yeah, I had a slight play around with it. It is different. You don't have that backswing on the second R1, which really hurts that setup. But it's, again, an off stock right now is kind of a little bit evil. To put
Yeah,
it
I
very
mean,
simply.
you don't even really need the straight sword, to be honest. You kind of just need the off stock.
There has been a couple of arena streams where I've done nothing but using an off stock. It's the fact it works at all is comical, but yeah, anything with off stock right now, even Uggs with an off stock at the moment is really nasty. Although I'd be curious as to how stuff like the slower weapons do manage in ganks, or trying to manage that crowd control kind of stuff, especially with its lower recovery. I am kind of curious as to how those kinds of setups are doing, or are they kind of the same as before?
Well, I mean, it's a little of the same. You know, I have that off seals Y combo that I'm a big fan of, and I have taken that into a few meta invasions just testing out the hyper armor differences.
Mm-hmm.
And it does seem stronger than it used to be, but at the end of the day, no matter what happens, I can always fall back on the catch flame just over and over.
Yeah.
And they walk into it. They see it, their buddy gets hit, they're like, oh, he's casting a spell, that means I can hit him, not realizing that's not the kind of spell you can just walk into. And that is just, I'm smashing L1.
Yeah.
I'm mashing. Doesn't matter if I'm minus or plus. I'm mashing. I'm negative as hell, and I don't give a shit, and I'm mashing. Like, that's just, and it works. It works because they see you casting something or doing something short range, and they think that's a free whatever. And as long as it's not a jumping attack, you get away with it. So, strength weapons and invasions are a little bit better in this patch, only because you can time that hyper armor, but you are only forcing trades. And as an invader, forcing trades is normally a bad idea because, again, war of attrition. They're going to back up and heal. They're going to get a lot more out of your health bar than you're going to get because you can't heal it the same way they can. And strength weapons will always have that problem. At least in Elden Ring, as they continue to do the host heal advantage.
Okay, and then as for yourself, Saint, what have you kind of been rocking lately yourself that you've really been enjoying? That's what's the scandal there?
I've been rocking Sword and Board for the past 6 years, and that will probably never change. So like in Elden Ring, it's just absolutely fantastic that you can, like I did Dark Souls 3 invasions for like 5 years or whatever, and so I'm using a straight sword, and my only option is square off, and so being able to like slap a different Ash of War on a straight sword, like spinning slash has like some insane amount of poise damage that it does. So like straight sword and shield, you've got a parry, and then you've got like a soft toggle. Now you've got spinning slash, so you have all this poise damage. So even back when passive poise was a thing, spinning slash is fast enough that like you'll hit somebody with it, boom, their poise is broken, and now what do they do? And I actually I enjoy the current patch a lot. One thing that I miss was heavy attack really is kind of like in a weird place now. Whereas before this patch, you could use the heavy attack to poise break people, and your average, like regardless of how like your average person that you're invading is like not good. There are different levels of not good. You will occasionally invade good players, but like it's rare. Most of the time, you're invading people who are bad and they know they're bad, or you'll invade people who are bad but they think they're good. And like heavy attack is slow. Everybody knows it's slower, right? But like a full bull goats would just walk into a straight sword R2 or heavy attack. They would just walk into it over and over and over again. And now, you know, I hate doing this. Like I hate it. But now you have frame advantage, right? I hate saying frame advantage about a game that's a 100-hour long RPG, but that's what but you have.
I'm right there with you, man. I totally agree with that statement.
Yeah. So now you have frame advantage, and the full bull goats is probably using power stance spears, power stance fist, power stance straight sword, whatever. And like I said, they're not good. So you press R2, you press heavy attack, that staggers them, breaks their poise. What are they going to do? As soon as they're going to press L1, and you're going to parry it, and now the fight's over, right? And yeah, like it's fine now, but I do miss the heavy attack having that that sort of like, yeah, that's what I'm for. I'm for breaking the poise on bull goats, because that's what it did. It was, you know, so if you could like find a good time to press R2 and hit somebody, like you know, that worked. But sword and board, I've been running sword and board forever. It's just like when I play these games, regardless of PvP or anything, like if I were to pick up Skyrim right now, I would play sword and board, you know, like that's just the thing that I like.
No, for sure. I mean, I've been the exact same every Souls game I've played. I have always used a halberd turtle on my PvE run forever. I don't know why. I will never know why. But for whatever reason, it's like, that halberd looks cool. It's mine now.
Yeah.
And every single time I've rocked it, and now it's good. It's like, yes.
Oh, yeah.
I've made it. At long last, it's been worth it. All these years of waiting.
When Dark Souls 3 came out, I was like, you can find like probably comments in old Scott Jund videos from like 2016 where Scott was like doing duels with like every weapon in Dark Souls 3. And I was like, bro, you have to try the Lothric Knight Sword. I'm telling you, it's way better than people give it credit for. And slowly, over time, everything was patched until like all that was left for like a period of time in Dark Souls 3 was like Lothric Knight Sword. Most people ran like Iron Round Shield and then a Chaos Dagger soft swap. And like when that happened, there was a part of me that was like, see? I told you, it's good. But then there was this other part of me where I was like, everybody's running this now. I'm gonna make a strength build and use colossal swords.
You're not like
I
those
had
other
that same-
girls, is what you're trying to say, is
Yeah.
it, Saint?
I had that same problem in 2. When the game came out, the katana was king because of the counter damage that everybody was just jerking off over constantly. It was katana this, katana that, katana running attack. And I kept telling people, it's the longsword, just the regular plain ass longsword, infinite poise break, good move set, doesn't care. And everybody's like, no, the damage is too much. Nihongu. They loved it. They just could not stop themselves. They wanted it all day. And then slowly, as the duelists started going, actually, wait a minute, hold on, this longsword thing is not so bad. And then all of a sudden, overnight, it was everybody longsword, and it happens in every game. Everyone has that knee jerk. There was even people knee jerking in Elden Ring saying that even with the crouch poke that Gugs wasn't all that good. I'm like, everyone's like, you're crazy, man. And then all of a sudden, within a week, every tryhard and their mother is using it and laughing about it and frame trapping people, and it happens. So every knee jerk decision in these games is almost always wrong when it comes to what is this going to look like or what are people going to use. Off seal, as Enda knows, was not popular.
Nope.
And then suddenly it was, because Catch Flame is just that good. And not even before this patch, now it's even better. So it just happens.
Catch Flame, like that's always a build that I make, is like a guy with a straight sword with pyromancy in the other hand. And like, when Dark Souls Remastered came out, I was like, oh shit, like I understand Black Flame now. Like, it's not about the damage, it's about breaking the poise, right? So like, okay, I Black Flame this Havelmom, and now I can sneak in a heavy attack and she can't backstab me, right? With like the Balder side sword, or I can Black Flame and I can R1 and that's safe. Like, that's safe as hell. Because I broke the poise and now the straight sword, that kind of. When I saw Catch Flame in Elden Ring, I was like, what have they done? Why would they make it this fast?
Yeah.
Whatever. Like, okay, cool. So I was like, you can do. There is some combo, and I'm always like in the heat of the moment, so I never remember. It's either running Catch Flame into Straight Sword or running Straight Sword into Catch Flame. One of those combos. And I don't know if it's light attack or heavy attack. I would think light attack. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Point is, it's like, it's insanely fast. It did a good amount of poise damage, and then I think they nerfed it for a while, and now I think they've brought it back where it originally was with the hyper armor patch. And I was like, why on earth is like O Flame even a spell? And then I started playing around with it, and I was like, oh, because it combos into literally everything in the game. Like, that's why it's a spell. It still needs to have its hitbox adjusted to where it can hit people jumping, because the flame is huge. But if you've ever seen like the actual hitbox for O Flame, it's like tiny bit bigger than Catch Flame. The animation is huge, but like, it doesn't hit all that. So I wish they would. I would again. I hate saying this about a game that's a 100-hour long RPG, but like, I really wish there was like more consistent anti-air for PvP. I wish O Flame filled that role. That'd be great. But O Flame is like, I didn't understand it at all until I hit someone, broke their guard, and then cast O Flame, and it hits like it's fast enough, and then that true combos into a straight sword. R1, and then after that, like, what does your opponent do? And like, most of them will like run away. So now you're on Catch Flame, and you just catch them with Catch Flame, and so like, O Flame could be better, but like, yeah, Catch Flame is just absolutely brutal.
Love Catch Flame.
And it's very Dark Souls 1-ish as well. I'm trying to make a build at the moment just for duels, which is just the old S-Stock turtle for DS1. But I can't find a way to add Catch Flame when the build is complete, because like it was pretty much the same in DS1, wasn't it, Dodd? Like, you always had access to your Black Flame. just to get those wake ups and to really put people in a really bad
Just changing
Yeah.
changing the timing and conditioning your
Mm.
opponent. It was especially considering how much people could heal in the
Yeah.
earlier games and would heal in those fights. So you were always going, what can I get that damage in? How long can I keep that pressure up? And then really you start kind of going through the motions. The first person that changes that up is the one that's going to land damage. And catch flame helps with that for sure.
And Restless, have you messed around with any incantation builds, or have you kind of strictly gone through for like melee, I guess? And same with you, Sarah.
I have played mage a couple of times.
And for more meta tryhard invasions, how have you found it?
It is definitely tougher. You have fewer tools to deal with certain type of ganks. I know some people really enjoy playing mage. Some people kind of main it. Personally, it's not for me. I feel like melee is just way more fun to play around with. But I wouldn't say that mage is bad or anything. It's definitely way stronger than in the previous games.
Yeah, for sure.
You have strong stuff like Carrion Slicer, you have Carrion Piso, which has a really good roll cash potential. And of course, there's just the damage itself that you can do with its spells. It's, well, kind of insane. The problem with spells, though, in my opinion, I may be going a bit on a tangent here, but the problem with spells is the spammability and the way it can work in ganks, where you are just simply unable to do anything while you're being spammed.
And that's a perfect segue. It's almost as if you'd planned it for my next major question, which is, of course, what are the biggest challenges you all face in your invasions, and how do you overcome them? So we'll start with the Dropout Dragon.
Understanding that in an invasion, again, being that war of attrition and controlling the pace of the fight, it was brought up earlier about how you can't do a whole lot about, mage spamming. There are certain obvious counters that you didn't bring because you wanted to have a fun build that didn't want to be, everything else. But there isn't a whole lot you can do, even lower or mid-level or even late level. It's funny. We see ganks that involve people throwing rocks using the purple rocks, which is not a good spell in of itself, but you must be aware of it at all times when they're firing it, because it's infinite tracking and it's coming for you and you're going to have to dodge it. So that's a good 3 seconds in the fight where you're not controlling the pace of it. And guess what? They're casting it again. And so is their buddy. And so is their buddy. And so is their buddy. And it repeats this cycle of how you have to control the pace of that fight. I would say the hardest challenge for Elden Ring specifically, other than just having fun, is finding the Goldilocks zone of, oh yes, this was a fun invasion. I got to play with them a little bit, but they also weren't so bad that I just killed them immediately, and that wasn't fun. Because it can go one of those two ways. You join in, they just die, they're running around, they won't even lock onto you. That happens even at meta level. It's just something, you want to be engaged, but you also want a little bit of the challenge in there, especially when you want to mess with them a bit, because that's what invading is. At the very beginning, we want to compare the different games. Demon Souls, out of all the different games, feels like the one where the invader was there to piss you off. And that wasn't their intention to do that. It just feels like that's how it ended up happening. There's lots of BM moves. There's lots of stun locks. There's lots of glitches. And the camera angles don't help you. And then someone walks up, instantly backstabs you. You're dead. You're one shot and gone. And then over time, they wanted invaders to be more of an obstacle, which is something he has said a number of times. But into these games as being the obstacle, sometimes you realize, oh, okay, I might be the obstacle for the host, but I want to win sometimes, but I also don't want to try too hard, or I would be somewhere else, in a real fighting game or in the arena. That's you want to find that Goldilocks zone in between. I'm having fun and I'm trying, but I'm not trying too hard, because then we're just frustrated and we're playing the keep away game. That is my biggest issue is trying to keep that mindset of, yes, I am in a fight. I don't want to have to no offense, G9 this like for fucking 10 minutes running away constantly in order to just get these guys. I don't care that much to sit in an invasion for 10 minutes. There are guys we know like JM who will watch them for a long period of time. I can't do that. So I need to find that Goldilocks zone, and that's the biggest challenge for me. Controlling the pace of the fight, winning that war of attrition, and also not being bored. And Elden Ring has not done very well at all three of these.
All right, and then for Restless, then the same question again. What is the greatest challenge in invasions, and how do you overcome them?
I could honestly talk about this for a long time.
By all means, the floor is yours.
I have some notes that I made before the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So to quickly go over them, the fundamental issue with invasions in Elden Ring, I think, is that as a mechanic, they were originally designed for a different kind of, for a very specific kind of area design,
Mm-hmm.
and for a very specific experience that is not always found in Elden Ring. Because, as you know, neither small dungeons, which have like basically no enemies, no PvE, no big open world areas were a thing in Demon Souls and Dark Souls 1 and all the other games. So invasions only happened in areas which are in Elden Ring. You could call them like legacy dungeons, right?
Mhm.
That's the closest counterpart. However, in small dungeons and in big open world areas, invasions can still occur, and that creates a lot of issues with the game because obviously when you fight three people, when you're forced to fight three people in a small dungeon or a cave, there's very little you can do to actually win, especially if the people have like a basic understanding of what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
It is very often unwinnable. As for open world invasions, well, there's a lot of issues too, like bad spawns, or
Yeah.
just the sheer fact that it's a like endless open world area where you can be spammed by magic or incantations or whatever ad infinitum without being able to hide, or like you're forced to dodge everything,
Mm-hmm.
so you can't really fight back. That I would say is the biggest issue, but there's also another glaring issue that it kind of boggles my mind that it is still in the game and it hasn't been fixed yet. The ability for the host to turn the Tonjes tongue on and off. That to me is absolutely insane. I don't know how or why they designed it this way, but it allows for so much abuse of the Tonjes tongue mechanic that it makes certain invasions really unfun.
Mm-hmm.
When you have like a dedicated gang who want to get invaders, but when they see that maybe the invader is a bit tougher than they would like to, they can just turn the tongue off and 2v1, 3v1 gank you without you having any chance of getting a co-invader. That, in my opinion, is extremely stupid and it should not be in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I have really high hopes that they will eventually maybe fix that. We'll see.
Yeah, hopefully. And kind of, how do you then kind of overcome these issues as an invader? What's kind of like, how does that then, how do you deal with that given that these issues do exist?
Oh yeah, I would say that the two main approaches to dealing with all of these issues are kind of opposite to each other. One is relying on burst damage, which is like very much viable in this game. as we know, the damage is way overtuned, especially in some meshes of war. But that is a high risk, high reward strategy. So if you fail, you can get blended to death. And the other tactics is to be patient and passive. But as Saint Riot has pointed out, I think it can be quite boring in certain situations. It can drag out invasions for a very long time, maybe longer than it should.
No.
So yeah, depending on my mood and depending on the kind of gang that I'm fighting, I will try to use either one of these strategies.
Okay. And then for Sarah, obviously, for Dodd gave kind of a brief, he showed us a little bit about demons, the old demons tech there, and I'm curious what the difference is here in with DS3, like what are the challenges there, and how do you find DS3 real? How do you find yourself overcoming them?
Honestly, the biggest problem that you encounter in invasions, at least at meta anyways, I'm not going to talk about PvEers because that's like, you know, but at meta anyways, like the biggest challenge is literally just like confirming the host kill. Just killing the host is a sometimes insurmountable task because when a host doesn't want to die, they will not die. It's very easy to not die in Dark Souls 3. People think that doing survival in DS3 is like this cool and impressive thing. It's not. It's boring as shit. And it's like all you gotta do is fast roll with quick step and you will not die. And if you think you're gonna die, if you run out of Estus, you just run up to the Aldridge boss door and fucking, like, you know what I mean? Like, if you don't want to lose, it's not hard to not lose, is what I'm saying. So, when you encounter, let's say, a 3-man gank at Pontiff, there is no point in killing the Phantoms, because as soon as the Phantoms die, the host will run away and resummon, or, like, whatever, and it's just fucking boring. Like, my Zoomer brain does not have the attention span to like deal with that, to like do a 10-minute chase down. So literally just like my strategy for dealing with stuff like that is very simple. I just Black Crystal. I just get out of there. There's like literally like, you know, you go in, you kill the Phantoms, you have whatever fun you can, and then once you feel like the invasion is getting boring shit, as it will, then I just Black Crystal. I don't even bother. So, yeah, that's my solution, I guess. Yeah, I just play, have as much fun as I can in a single invasion, and then, you know, because when you're chasing someone down, I'm not gonna get any like cool backstabs or anything. So like, there's no dopamine to be gained from chasing down a fast roll, quick step host for like an indeterminate amount of time.
You
so
mean that's not good for a montage, Sarah? Really? No.
It's not. It's not. I can't make a montage out of doing spear ring attacks.
You absolutely can. But what you do is you zoom the camera in on you FAP ring, and like with every toggle of the FAP ring, zoom in and put the anime like Dragon Ball Z lines as it like moves forward and gets closer and closer and closer. You could pull that off.
That'd
be
a great video.
Is that copyrighted, Saint? Asking for a friend.
No, I'm giving that away. I'm giving back to this community.
All right, for sure.
And now, Saint, the same question to you. It's down to you to save us all on this one. How
real quick?
Yes, go for it.
I have to. One of the funniest fucking things I ever saw in an invasion video. Schwa Akari had this moment in one of her videos where the host lost their Phantoms and then just gave up. And so they sat down and they were just like, okay, kill me. And so Schwa also sat down next to them, but edited in a way sort of like what I was talking about, where like they would just like zoom in sharp on random stuff. And it was like, look at this insane battle of willpower. Who will give up first? And I've always thought that was hilarious. Okay. What's hard about ganks? Is that the question?
So how, like, what's the most challenging part of invasions, and how do you overcome those challenges?
Okay. What Dodd said, the Goldilocks zone, that's real. For me personally, it's easier to hit the Goldilocks zone in Elden Ring. Dark Souls 3, as Sarah pointed out, like at a certain point, there is no Goldilocks zone. There is no fun to be had. There's just this misery that we inflict upon ourselves and others. And like, because fights can do that in Dark Souls 3, like the fact that Elden Ring, everyone gripes, and I understand why, but about the high damage. And it's like, at least there was a winner. Something happened. You know what I mean? Like, there has to be something said about that. Like, while waiting for Elden Ring to come out, all I knew was Dark Souls 3. And then, like I said, Dark Souls Remastered came out. I went back and I played that, and I was like, what the fuck? You could actually kill people? This is insane. And then Bloodborne happened. There was a month where Bloodborne was free on PSN, and I went back and I invaded my balls off in Bloodborne. And again, what the hell? People just die in this game.
Yep.
You can kill people. This is fucking outrageous. And so when I went back to DS3, I was a little bit jaded because I was like, and it's not even like an invader anchor versus scenario. Like, invaders can also be like absolute assholes. I know that because like I did it. Like when I was making early Dark Souls 3 invasion videos, I was like, what are 2 OP rings that you need on every build? Obscuring ring and Silver Cat. Just run away. Just leave. Just walk out. If it sucks, hit the bricks. Like you as an invader, you also, it's harder against gankers than it is for a host to do it. But like, you know, you could do it. So like the thing is, like, I made a build at like level 60 for a charity thing in Elden Ring. And I was like, okay, I want to do like a Blood Flame Talon that will combo into the War Talon, that bird sword. It has a cool heavy attack. It hits twice. I want to make a build that does that. Blood Flame Talon into R2. That'd be cool. And I'll use, you know, all the Moog stuff. And so I'm playing around with the numbers on this build, and I'm like, all right, do I want to use Blood Flame Blade? Or do I want to have a bleed weapon? So do I need Faith or do I need Arc? Or should I minimize those and go Dex? And I'm playing around with all these numbers, and like eventually it just ended up being like, you pick something. Like you have to pick one thing. At meta level, you can play around a little bit more. Like an Elden Ring build is essentially done at level 80, in my opinion. Like you have, you know, you can have 60 vigor and you can have like 40 in a damage stat, and like you can even have a smidge of like some goofy shit, right? So when you go to meta level, you've got like 30 or whatever 40 extra levels to play with, and so like you can get a little goofy with it, but the point is like always have something that will just straight kill people. And also jar cannon. Can't stress that enough. Like you might not have enough strength on every build to use the jar cannon. Still get it and still upgrade it completely as high as you can upgrade it, and go buy explosive bolts and go buy lightning great bolts. And it'll still knock people down, and it'll still do a lot of damage. And when players get knocked down, because that to me is like the worst. I hate passivity. It's so fucking boring. Like, I understand people want to have like the fighting game experience, but like, bro, there's no walls in this fucking game in Invasions. Like, there's no pressure. There's none of that. Like, nothing exists that should exist in a game that is meant to be like PvP focused. So like these people who like hang out at the shack, and then like the moment you start winning, like I'll duel you. I'll show up and I'll give you a duel. But like the moment you start healing, it's like, okay, so now you've decided you have 15 of those and I have 6 of them.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to leave. I'm gonna walk over here to where the lobsters are, and I'm gonna shoot you with a fucking jar cannon until one of two things happens. You can disconnect or you can summon a blue. And this is, I hate blues, but like they serve a purpose. And the purpose is they break a stalemate. The blue, and this is a problem, the blue's job is to break a stalemate. The host team doesn't want to make progress against an invader who's hanging out with enemies, and an invader doesn't want to walk into a blender. A blue should show up, and in theory, the blue was doing stuff. He was playing the game, minding his own business, and he got pulled in, and now it's his job to help. He doesn't want to be here all day, in theory. The problem is, in practice, what actually happens is the blues show up, and they're like, hey, I can sit here and do gestures with these guys. Look at this jester. Here's another one I got. Let's teabag. Like, the dumbest fucking people on the planet. And so they'll sit there and also not break the stalemate. And jar cannon. And if the jar cannon can't fix it, then nothing can. But
and it's
jar
a
cannon.
black crystal and block kind of situation after that one, is it?
The only time I will ever black crystal out is when someone, and I fucking hate blues. Can't stress this enough. But if someone summons blues and then sends them home, that pisses me off to no end, because like it's not about me and you playing a game anymore. Like, you invited this other guy to play and he just wants to play the game, and you told him he could come play the game. And then the moment he wasn't exactly what you wanted him to be, you kick him out of the game.
Yeah.
That's the only time I'll ever black crystal out, because that pisses me, and I will absolutely block those people.
Okay.
Because at that point it's like, you told him to come here. You told him he could come play the game with us, and now you kick him out, and like, he doesn't get to play the game. You literally wasted that dude's like real life time. You know what I mean? He's just trying to play the game. And now, like, it's gone beyond me and you don't like each other and in this invasion, and it's turned to like, you're an asshole in real life, so fuck off. But most of the time, eventually, if you shoot people with a jar cannon enough, they will decide, like, okay, guess we should go, especially if you shoot phantoms, because they don't have 15 flasks to fall back on. A host does, so it's harder to get a host to, give a shit about their... But a lot of the times, any of this, like what I'm describing happens, a lot of the time, if you just like, okay, I'm walking over here by the lobsters, they just disconnect.
Yeah. Because it wasn't quite what they were signed up for. But either way, the floor is now open. So if anyone said anything that interested anyone else, please do bring it up, and we'll probably go on some crazy tangent about something or other, no doubt. Or are we all kind of on the same page on that one? Because we can.
Like, everything everybody said is like spot on. Like what Dodd was talking about with the Goldilocks zone, like that's spot on. What Sara was saying about the hosts that just want to run, that's spot on. The bit about like the Taunter's Tongue, being able to turn that off, that's spot on. I am convinced that someone high up at From Software doesn't know what the Taunter's Tongue is doing, because what it's doing now doesn't make any sense at all. It's so stupid.
And the tragic thing about it, especially early on, because I know I did an awful lot of testing with Brenna, because there was tournaments happening and tournaments were promised, and we didn't even know if it would be possible. And in hindsight, just going to Stormvale was the best option, but we were trying to do tournaments out in open world, and we're like, this is going to be impossible unless we can turn off the Taunter's Tongue. And an awful lot of newer people, funnily enough, were hosting small community events, and they were just doing it in random parts of the open world for whatever reason. They thought that was a good idea, and so for them it made sense having the ability to turn off the Taunter's Tongue. But in a game where you can be invaded while going through a playthrough, unless you've killed all the bosses, it makes no sense. I don't know why they did it. It's like, and their invasions should be their priority as a means of getting more people invested into the PvP, into PvP in general. So I don't know.
FromSoft, FromSoft doesn't play its own games. I mean, that's they don't play these games, and it's pretty easy to see when you see stuff about, and I was going to wait until the third question and bring most of this up, but I mean, at the end of the day, they're not aware of what most people are doing, or the fun that is bled out of this game like blood from a stone. They don't play it. And the moment that they do for 20 minutes, sometimes they do something right, like, putting in Wex dust into this game. Sometimes. If they had played for 30 minutes, they would have toned down the Moon Veil. If they played for 40 minutes, they would have been like, well, actually, passive poise is a little bit wonky. Maybe not remove it, but maybe change it up. But they don't. They don't play these games. They interpret their selective feedback from like 4 dudes in Japan. And it becomes very difficult to put those frustrations out and say this is an issue.
Everybody gets mad at me in Elden Ring because they're like, I want this to change. And again, this bothers me because if you play a real fighting game, they don't change shit for a long time because the players are constantly doing new shit. And they're like the immediate, like if From Software had put out Street Fighter 6, they would have nerfed Zangief. And it's like,
yeah,
don't.
Oh, it was infamous. It's funny you use Zangief as an example because when people in Dark Souls 2 were doing 500 damage throwing holy water that had a hitbox that lingered for 10 minutes, what did they nerf? Golf swings, because some guys on Reddit complained that their fight clubs were being ruined by a guy with a Zweihander. And it's this was to nobody who needed this. You don't know, but some dude bitched and moaned, and it happens.
And to something like the thing that like people get mad at me because I'm like, just wait, let it play out, let's see what happens. But like part of that is me understanding and knowing that like me and you and everybody here, we're talking to like Bandai Namco, best case scenario, we're talking to Bandai Namco. Like there are like people in Japan, and From Software doesn't have Bandai Namco in Japan. They put the games out themselves. They're their own publisher. Mm-hmm. So like the Japanese players are talking to From Software.
Right.
And like, so it doesn't, like, we can bitch and moan, and I'm not saying you shouldn't bitch and moan about stuff that obviously needs changing, but like at a certain point you have to understand that like what we are saying is going to take twice as long to get across. And another thing is like the community has like a really bad habit of identifying a problem and then coming up with the worst possible solution and then saying it would be so easy. It would be so easy to give like so the Blood Flame what was that thing? The Blood Flame glitch with Blood Flame and
putting
I'm on fire.
The Blood Flame aura and it also used to be Deathblight aura.
Right. Yeah. So it was Deathblight aura, and then like they were like, oh okay, and they fixed that, but then it just became Blood Flame aura. Okay. All right. Like zoom out of the tree you're looking at and observe this giant forest of this same stupid item toggle glitch. Has existed since Demon Souls, and they had to patch it, and then they had to patch it in Dark Souls 1 because it existed there, and then they had to patch it in Dark Souls 2 because it existed there, and then they had to patch it in Dark Souls 3 because it existed there. They are finally, it also existed in Bloodborne, they are finally at a point where they looked at that, and they were like, okay, fuck, stop for a minute. Let's not fix this problem. Let's fix what's causing this problem. And so now, like, the way buffs work is entirely different than it was when the game came out. Like, the way buffs are applied to your character is different than it was when the game first came out. And that's what they did. Rather than just hotfix Blood Flame aura, they fixed it so that there's not going to be a blank aura that takes its place next.
Right.
So, And I think they deserve some credit for that. And again, I'm not like, people get mad at me because I'm like, just, it's not going to happen overnight, and I understand, but like the solution you're offering is probably stupid.
Yes.
Like, but yeah, so whatever we're talking about, I've trailed and rambled, so I apologize.
Well, I mean, no, and it also comes, content creators are always biased, right? We need it done, and we need it done now because we see the overall scope of what the community is going to do. And if we see a lot of our viewers are going, hey, this one thing is broken constantly, and I'm going to quit the game if they don't fix this, I mean, it makes us start banging the drums very loudly, very quickly, and having a lot of knee-jerk reactions. And that is mostly the feedback loop that's going to happen within a community, is content creators banging that drum one way or another. So it's very easy for us to be like, God, why won't they just fucking patch it? When, yeah, it's a little bit more complicated than that. In FromSoft's case, I won't give them the credit because I know they don't play the game. And I can't, it's hard for me to ever give them that credit because there are some very obvious solutions to different things. One of the issues I have, like invader spawning.
Yeah.
Invader spawning is not good in Elden Ring. It's not been great in the other games, but in Elden Ring, it's very bad because of the verticality of the areas. It's very bad. And there were two teams that worked on a solution to one singular problem. How do you stop a bunch of griefers from hitting a dude while he's spawning in? One team said, let's make them invincible on spawn in and give them, 5 seconds of can't be hurt. They can do whatever they want. Great. Awesome. The other team said, let's spawn them the second farthest spawn away from the original node. And they went, great, we'll do both.
Yeah.
Instead of picking one.
The problem with spawns in Elden Ring, Castle Soul and Carrier Manor are the two that I will immediately default to because everyone recognizes that the spawn points there suck, and also it's the easiest. Remove every spawn point except for one.
Mm-hmm.
Put me
the top one.
in Castle Soul, put me right in front of the boss fog. In Carrier Manor, put me right in front of the last elevator, the only elevator, but the elevator leads up.
And then there's Morn, isn't it? In the southern area, Castle, isn't it Morn?
Oh my god, Castle Morn is infuriating.
If you spawn in the middle or bottom section of that, and they're above you, there's nothing you can do. You can use the red finger, but the red finger doesn't, or the phantom finger.
Oh my god, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
The red finger is so goddamn useless. It spawns you in the same fucking spot over and over and over. You just use all of them. You're like, well, I guess I'm stuck here now.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do.
Sorry.
And that's what I was going to say. I mean, there's nothing you can do if it doesn't do its last check. It doesn't say, previous person spawned previously at this point. It doesn't have a check for that, so it just keeps doing it in that location for some reason. And then now, if you use all three at the very bottom of that, like that particular example, Castle Morn, you're fucked. You got to sit there and wait, and unless you're JM, you're not happy. So there's nothing you can do about it.
Also, when people get invaded, especially people who don't want to be invaded, they just won't make progress.
No,
and so won't. You are just stuck there. You just have to leave. I would like to say the red finger does suck for moving you around and putting you in a better position. But everybody shits on the red finger. I love the red finger because the best example I have is Raya Lucaria. You'll find gankers who sit at the last elevator right in front of Renala, and they're like, haha, we're at the top of the elevator, come up the elevator, and you can get on the elevator, take it up, and then use the red finger and spawn directly behind them. And it works every time. Not the finger puts you there every time. The finger might put you back at the bottom of the elevator, but they are always standing overlooking the elevator using Mohg's Trident or Dragon Breath. They're always they start using that shit the moment they see you take the elevator up, and now you've spawned in behind them, and you can just jar cannon a dude into the hole or whatever. You can run up behind him and backstab him, whatever you want to do. The finger rules for that, and I love the finger. But what we want is a repositioning type, and we don't have that, and the finger sucks for that. But
absolutely.
For the stuff that it does work, and I like it. I love running behind a rock and using it, and they come look, and they're like, oh, wait, where'd he go? I'm not here. Boom, jar cannon. I love that shit. That never gets old to me.
Yeah. Well, and 5% of the time it'll work out for you. 95% of the time you go, I just wasted a loaded screen. Repeatedly. Yeah. And that's going to be mostly people's experience.
I would say the problem here is that the Phantom Finger has two opposite use cases. One is you need to spawn closer to the host because you got a bad spawn and you're 3,000 kilometers away. And the other use case is when you're getting chased and you need to get out.
Right.
Sure.
So it's always random. You can spawn in, you can get spawned in the same spot that you're using the finger in which case it won't be doing doing you any good.
A lot of it is like, how much time do you care to put into this stupid game? And as someone who doesn't have a real job anymore, like, if I'm going to use the red finger to get away and I'm being chased, I'm going to run to a spot where I know there's not a spawn point, and then I'm going to use the red finger so that it can't put me there. I have, on accident, several times, especially early on, ran directly to a spawn point, used the red finger, and then spawned right there
Oh my
with the gankers just like right
God.
on top of me. Like, guess who doesn't have iframes this time, bitch? Is
Oh,
it
yeah.
me? Yeah, it's you.
Oh,
But
man.
if you care enough, and I understand that most people aren't going to care this amount, and so their experience is going to be like vastly different. Like, that finger can totally suck ass and not do the thing that you want it to do. But I think the finger is better than people think it is, because everyone, like, Mount Gelmir spawn points, absolute trash, garbage, ass.
Oh yeah.
Mountaintop of Giants spawn points, garbage, ass. Like, a lot of the
There's a
open world.
spot in Lucaria where you just get stuck. You can't even
Oh
move up
my
the little hill
God.
yet. That's constant.
The one in the
There's a
mountaintops
dungeon-
as well. I've had that massive issue where you just use the finger and you're just there, and you try and use the finger again and you just spawn in the exact same place over and over again underneath the geometry. And I think that's still in the game. That's still broken, isn't it? Is that
Yes.
Oh my
Yes,
God.
it is still in the game. There's also a few dungeons
Yes.
where you can spawn inside an object, like a vase or something, and you make a jump to get out of the object, and you get stuck in the air, and you eventually die.
I have a clip of that of me doing an infinite falling attack for that and actually killing the guy. So I was happy in that one moment,
That's hilarious.
but I don't want it to keep happening. That is not a good thing.
There's some funny things. Go on, sorry, Said. Go on.
The main difference, I think, between like myself and a lot of other people is that, like, the idea of that happening is so funny and goofy that, like, it almost to me, it doesn't, but it almost justifies the existence of that stupid spawn, problem.
Well, I think
And,
that's
like,
the difference between you and everybody in the room is that you're still enjoying it.
Right.
So like,
but see, I mean, like, I say this all the time. Like, I don't give a shit what mechanics they put in for PvP. It doesn't matter to me. If I wanted, like I have Street Fighter. I can just turn on Street Fighter and I can watch myself get better, play better opponents, lose, learn, feel good when I win, feel like I did it. It's me. I know the rules. I did good. With these games, it's the same sort of like competitive desire to get into it, where it's like I want to win my invasions, but like I can never lose sight of the fact that you are playing a game that is like a 100-hour long RPG, and the existence of these like PvP things is like, I'm never going to expect a level of balance that I would want if I were playing like an actual competitive, like, fighting game. And I think that, like, the putting the arenas in the games and stuff like that, and the ability to like organize like fight clubs and tournaments with people that who are interested in it, like, I think that that's cool that we can do that. And I don't want that to go away. But like, when it comes to invasions, it's like I am going into a other person's game. They may want me there if they're gankers, but like, there's an equal chance that they don't want anything to do with me. And I have just showed up, and this is just fun for me. And like, I'm going, like, there's no end to the level of shenanigans that I can do. Like, I can be JM, I can be Peeve, I can hide in a bush and shoot these people with arrows. Until they get so frustrated that they walk over to me and they can't see me, so I backstab them and they die. Like, do you want to do that? Because you can. Name any other game where that happens. Like,
Well, I think that's part of the issue, right? Is the uniqueness of Souls games is why the PvP crowd wants more out of it. I'm on your team with if anybody wants to take it too seriously, go competitive, play a real fighting game. Been there, done that, Enda knows that.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say the reason that people get passionate instead of kind of just going, well, I could go play a competitive game, is that most of their friends play this game. A lot of them are stuck in these communities because they this is a very unique game that gives you a sense of satisfaction or joy at some point, running either off of nostalgia or your current friend group, that makes you go, yeah, I want this to be better. So a lot of those complaints are people who snowball from one thing to another, but understand, yeah, they could play another game. They should play another game, in my opinion, but they won't because they're stuck here for one reason or another. I'm stuck here because I need money, and I'm also stuck here because of friend groups. But otherwise, it's people wanting something better, or at least wanting the mechanics to make sense. Because we were talking about what the finger for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. There's a solution there, but it's not all the way there. The arenas exist, but it's not all the way there. There's invasions are there, but you never get a co-invader, and it's always blues. It's always 1 or 2 steps short of a mechanic that's working the way that just seems obvious. And if it's not working that way, people are going to go, why didn't they just do this? Because it just seems obvious this is the way it was supposed to work. And then when that doesn't happen, they're just sitting there scratching their ass.
So the way that I look
and then they get mad about it.
The way that I look at it as someone who kind of constructs rule sets for tournaments, at least or weird formats to kind of make play more interesting. I look at it in terms of incentives. I think Saint brought up something earlier on that I thought was kind of on the money, and that was more on the lines of there's no reason for the host to want to fight you back.
Sure.
If we think about it, their win con is to get to the boss fog, or to get to an area where that you can't reach them, basically is the idea, or you get kicked out. That is their only win condition. That is as close to a win condition as you can get. And the invaders' entire win condition is to stop the host from doing that, or to personally kill them, right? And how do you make that loop where one of them, the main objective, is to either kill them or run away? How do you make that loop in any way entertaining for both parties? Is kind of, I think, a central kind of contradiction in Invasions. Because one of them just needs to live. And I think Sara pointed out with Dark Souls 3, they had a lot of tools to be able to allow them to just live forever. You could fap ring glitch around the place, you could quick step, light roll, and you were just, there was nothing, you had no guaranteed damage outside of you get them stuck in a small room. And I think that unless Souls finds a way to make that loop more engaging, then I can never see myself as being a big fan of Invasions personally. Because unless I can corner someone, which you can't do in a massive open world, or even a more constructed level, I feel that there's no way to get that guaranteed damage without being just an annoying little shit that exists somewhere in the level. I guess.
Well, and that was their original intention, as they've said in podcasts, not that we know if they're lying or not or talking out their ass, is for us to be the obstacle. If the players don't want that obstacle, they play offline.
Mm-hmm.
And if they make the argument, I want to play with my friends and co, that's the boon you get from playing with your friends and having over-leveled summons that come in and carry you through the whatever. The con of that is it opens you up to someone coming in to be an obstacle. Multiplayer is multiplayer.
I often compare it to people who are it's they're like, I just want to play with my friends. It's when you play Monopoly, do you just get rid of the one that says you go to jail, the card or whatever?
Exactly.
Do you just not play with that? I understand, and I think 1 million unique downloads of the seamless co-op mod speaks to there's better ways to do it than what we currently have, because the invasion mechanic itself has been largely unchanged for this entire time, and there have been ideas that even From Software has played around with a little bit that were cool. I love the idea of like, I'm a host, I'm playing Bloodborne, and I need help fighting Vicar Amelia. So I ring my bell and I summon Inda. And Inda, you show up and you have the Vile Blood rune on.
Mm-hmm.
And then like I summon Sara and Sara shows up, but Sara's wearing the Radiance rune. You two are gonna fight now. Like that just breaks out. Like that's just the way it works. Like y'all two have beef that like supersedes, and so like crazy shit like that. The Grave Lords, like Sara plays a lot of Dark Souls 3. Like I don't know if you played back when the seed of a giant tree used to last for 3 hours. It was absolutely just so stupid.
I did not, but I know of that having existed at one point, and I am very
remember
thankful
that.
that it was changed.
3 hours.
So, like,
I remember that. Not
Yes.
fun.
What?
And I mean, it lasted for a long time. Like we were like 6 or 7 patches deep before they fixed that.
Oh yeah.
So like, but my point is like, you'll have these people who gank, they kill the entire level, whole level's dead. Invader shows up, they have literally nothing to focus on except for that invader. And in Elden Ring, that's it. There's not going to be a second invader, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I personally, I'm cool with that. A lot of times a second invader shows up and they're running some shit that is like way more try hard than I'm running, and they just basically eliminate my encounter. So like my chance to have like what I would consider quote unquote a fun fight is gone. And I don't hold a grudge. Like the other invaders' condition is win, so they win. But like I'm like, well shit, there goes my chance to do something fun. But I would, you know, I would be fine if it was just one invader, but like don't let them turn the Taunter's tongue off. Let me invade them again.
Yeah.
Right? Like there should be no invader cooldown for people who are actively like, we're ganking. No, we're not. We're ganking. No, we're not.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
That's
Like
a huge oversight. Huge oversight.
they have that. And again, I wouldn't have a problem if you could turn the Taunter's tongue off by sitting at the Grace. Fine. But then that means you're the only one in your world and you had a
Right.
moment to sit at your Grace. So like, all right, but Grave Lords in Dark Souls 1, like you're playing the game and suddenly, you know, maybe you killed all the enemies already. It doesn't matter. Some other asshole a world away decided to put a bunch of crazy tough enemies in your world, and now invaders who are fighting you, gankers, like have something to fall back on. They have like these crazy tough enemies. And so like if I'm an invader and I invade a Grave Lord, I'm chilling with him. Like if I know there's gankers in the area, me and the Grave Lord, we're chill. We're buddies. The blues who show up to kill the Grave Lords, those are essentially the gankers that he's pissing off. I'm here to kill them, right? There were all these like interesting like dynamics that they played around with that existed outside of just kill the host or run into the fog.
Yeah, and they've not really retouched it.
The thing that you were talking about, like the like how do you find a gameplay loop that does that? So they give hosts more runes for killing an invader than an invader gets for killing a host.
Mm-hmm.
And they give you a rune arc, I think, if you're the host and you kill an invader. I might be wrong on that, but you get a sizable amount of runes. What was the community's response to that? They parked themselves AFK on a bridge that you couldn't reach.
Yeah.
So that you would leave their world and they would. And I understand giving hosts a reward for an invader black crystalling. If I was going to be like the biggest dick in the world, I would fight you and fight you and fight you until I couldn't fight you anymore, and then I would just leave. Fuck you, right? And you get nothing for that. Like that's how Dark Souls 3 works. But with Elden Ring, they were like, okay, that seems a little skewed. And so they give the host and the phantoms, hey, here's your flask, here's your runes. But that opens up, now your players are going to park themselves on a bridge somewhere. And then, from the invader's perspective, give me flasks when a blue black crystals. Give me flasks when a phantom black crystals. They don't do that. And so it feels kind of like, why?
So Discount is actually Discount has just actually chimed in here and said no rune arc for killing an invader, by the way, just a furlicating remedy, so you don't even get a rune arc out of it, which is interesting.
Yeah, which is funny because the invader gets a rune arc and he can't use it. So go figure.
But just I think we're kind of loosely going into the kind of the final question here in chat. Just as a heads up, we will have a very, very brief Q&A. So if you have any questions, just use the highlight message, just so I can see it, and you can direct your questions to either the entire panel or to an individual host. So get your questions coming in. I'll keep note of them while we go through just the last kind of topic I wanted to touch on, as it's getting quite late. But the last question is, of course, kind of we're all more or less we've kind of talked around this issue a little bit as the podcast has gone on. And what are the things you'd most like to have changed in Elden Ring? And this is for everyone, and even the invasion system in general from FromSoft. What is the biggest thing you would like changed out of it? Could be any of the games pretty much, and they all have an awful lot of the same DNA. So Restless, I'll start off with you. What are the biggest changes you would like to have made in the invasion system for Elden Ring or the other games you've played?
Well, you know what's wild to me is that they did a lot of things right in the previous games, but for basically no reason they undid that in Elden Ring. You couldn't turn off Dryfinger in the Souls games, but for some reason they decided to add that in Elden Ring without apparently thinking much of the consequences. So yeah, obviously I would like that fixed, and if we make it the Tonch's Tongue only not fixable, but only toggleable at a Site of Grace, that would fix AFK farming too. So it's a win-win situation, but for some reason they don't do it. They don't fix that. Something I was thinking about the other day as well is that well, you know how small cave or small dungeon invasions can be extremely unfair to the point of being unwinnable, even if the team you're fighting are bad players, just PvEers. They can still be pretty much unbeatable in a small confined area with no PvE, no anything you can fall back on.
Especially if it's dark.
Oh yeah,
that too. Yeah. So a fun way to balance that out would actually be allowing the invader to enter the boss room and fight together with the boss. Because after all, the boss is what makes the dungeons and the caves difficult. That's why people summon phantoms for. Definitely not for just killing the regular enemies that really present no danger whatsoever, like 99% of the time. So that would not only make it more balanced and fun for the invader, but also more fun for the home team, I believe, because otherwise they're just cheating the boss 2v1, 3v1 with not much challenge.
Okay, and Sarah, do you have any thoughts on how in the invasion system what would have to change in ER for you to come back, I suppose, or further from that, what improvements would you have made to DS3
In
system?
Elden Ring?
In Elden Ring, yeah.
Jesus, dude, I feel like I could talk for like 4 hours about what it would take for me to play that fucking game. But I guess in short, all that funny Taunter's tongue business, get that the fuck out of here. Holy shit. And then bigger fucking lobbies? I don't know, is it so hard to believe that a open world game, a game which is supposed to be like the biggest and most extravagant of the Souls games, why the fuck do we have 4 players? I understand that there were like technical limitations or whatever, but like, dude, at least give us 6, if not 8 in the open world areas. And please, for the love of God, what the fuck happened to Covenants?
Yeah.
I've been mad about this since DS3. Covenants in DS3 were literally just a ring slot where you could change your phantom color, and that's about it. You didn't play differently as a Aldridge or a Mound Maker, or, well, I guess as a Mound Maker you might have played slightly differently, but they weren't in-depth at all.
You're erasing fantastic Covenant rewards, like that katana.
Yeah. But mostly what I'm annoyed about is the fact that we don't have any like Covenant areas or like anything like at least what we had in 3. It would have been nice to have had in Elden Ring, but no, we just don't get anything, and I think that's really a shame because Covenants were like a really interesting thing, and they're just completely gone now. They
Yep.
just like don't exist anymore, and we don't get anything that adds to multiplayer really in that regard, and that's just annoying. I think a lot of my problems with 3, aside from Covenants being shit and the multiplayer not being very in depth, it's mostly just about the game. It's not really about the invasion system. I think the invasion system by itself is like fine and it works, but just the game is shit, dude. Like I can count on one hand the amount of attacks that you can't just roll on reaction consistently, which yeah, anyways, that's a whole nother topic, but basically yeah, that's
Better game
lots of
clocks.
stuff in Elden Ring that would need to change. Backstabs is one of them. I feel like as someone who, did a lot of that in 3, the backstabs in Elden Ring, well, day 1 backstabs, that shit was insulting. They may as well have not existed. They shouldn't have existed in that state.
Yeah.
They were actually a hindrance. Now they're a little bit more usable, but the issue now is that when you still have an angle check, yet it is so minuscule in its effect that it doesn't even really prevent like the quote unquote face stab from happening.
Yeah.
All it really does is make the mechanic feel inconsistent. Like I don't know if I'm gonna get this backstab because this depends so highly on my latency and the very specific angle and the tracking they have on their weapon when it's like so it feels so what's the word I'm looking for, like
Arbitrary.
abstract and arbitrary. Yeah, it's like not, it doesn't feel like it yeah, it just feels really weird.
All right.
Yep. I would also like to add here quickly that
Mhm.
the recovery is being basically non-existent in this game. Not only makes duels more boring, but backstab fishing too, because well, a lot of the things that you would expect to be punishable with a backstab, in fact, have too short of a recovery to do that, especially on latency.
Well, now, and the Saint Riot, what would you change about invasions in Elden Ring and the invasion system in Souls games as a whole? You kind of touched on it a bit earlier, but we'll give you, if there's anything else you've thought up, go for it.
Yeah, the Taunter's Tongue being toggleable, like out in the open while you have a phantom, like that would be like number 1. Alternatively, you could fix that by saying like, "Hey, are you in New Game Plus? Your invader timer's cut in half." So like that would be fun for like my meta level builds and my builds that are like up, like 150. Like I understand protecting players who need protecting. But after a certain point, it's like, okay, these people, like the Taunter's Tongue thing as an example, no one will ever use that twice and be, you know what I'm saying? You'll, if you don't know what that item does and you use it and two invaders show up and whip your ass, you're like, oh, it's because I used that thing, never going to use it again. Like, you don't need to protect the people that use the Taunter's Tongue. Do you need to protect the level 15 guy who doesn't know anything about this game? The level 30 guy, 60? Sure, yeah, protect him. He's fine. The level 150 guy, let him go. He's fine.
Yeah.
Like, let him do his thing. In Elden Ring, unpopular opinion probably, that's okay. Covenants. If we had covenants that were, but this is, again, this is going more towards how would I change everything, not just Elden Ring. The covenants, like, we have these ideas in Dark Souls 1 with like grave lords. That's great. That rules. Why is it never shown back up? Dark Souls 2, Rat Covenant. You've come into my world. You invade my world. You don't want to, but you do. And I've set all these traps, and they're all going off, and they're going to kill you. What are we doing? How is that not back?
Or the Belfries, which was the
Yeah.
main introduction to most people in Dark Souls 2's PvP. Was the casual group of going, I'm going to hang out in the Belfry for a while, which is gone.
And Gank City, I think, did a decent enough job of like kind of recreating that, but Gank City and the Swamp, I think, are both a little too big to fill that role, whereas the Belfries were very like, here it is, you know. It really felt like going into like almost like an FPS lobby, like you and your bros, and you're going to go up against these other dudes. But yeah, like the Covenant thing also. I would love to see them do the weird stuff, like with Bloodborne again, and introduce things that, like, in Dark Souls 2, if you kill an invader, that's a covenant. There's a covenant for like, I'm a host, I killed an invader, I'm gonna go talk to the guy, and he's gonna give me stuff. Like, speaking to what you brought up, Inda, with like, why should they bother?
Yeah.
Well, now they can bother. There's like there's a reward for that, and it doesn't have to be massive. It could be like, your cape can be turned blue, and people would 100% be like, fuck yeah, blue cape, you know.
I fought for my auras in 2. Absolutely fought
yeah.
for my auras, useless as they are. I fought for them.
Yeah, like with Bloodborne, it felt like they kind of went in too hard with the gem farming. It's like, hey, do you want 140% extra damage? Yes, obviously. Well, then go do this. Okay. Like, if you bring back something like that, don't give people extra damage. Just let them turn their helmet black or whatever. Like, you know, like, give them a big red aura, you know, and people will do it because they want to look cool. So, like, the idea of like covenants that reward hosts for taking part in an invasion, and Judas. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Judas, but Judas was like he's a great content creator. He had this idea for a covenant where, like, if you died and you had like a large blood stain that you had left behind, it would summon an invader whose job it was to either kill you or race you to your bloodstain. And like, whoever got to your bloodstain first wins. Now, you can kill each other if you want to, or if it becomes more convenient to do that. But like, the idea of something other than, and like, what's on the line there? Like, honestly, people, especially new players, they're like, oh no, my runes, my souls. Oh no, how do I ever get them back? Kill a monster. Like,
yeah,
they'll overcomplicate that. But like, that idea of like, here's something else you can do that isn't just, you know, fight this guy or go to the boss fog. Like, you know, anything. It doesn't have to be that. But when he brought that idea up, I was like, that's brilliant. Like, anything like that would be cool. Like, put a random invader in your world, and their job is like, they can go kill a night cavalry, right? And if they kill the night cavalry before you kill the invader, like, they win, and you don't get the reward for this particular night cavalry unless you know, do X, Y, and Z or something. But like, anything other than just like, we're gonna kill each other.
Here's some souls. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Like, rewards that are cool, and like an incentive for them to take part in being invaded. Because like, the biggest bummer, like what Sarah was talking about, when people run forever, like, that typically triggers like some hunter instinct in me where I'm like, oh, this means something to you, I'm going to take it away then. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's that Goldilocks zone of like, this is fun, yay, and then there's like that switch that goes off where I'm like, I have to kill you because you think that this means something.
Sure.
And that can turn into its own fun because now I'm trying real hard, and like, that can be fun in short bursts. But something that like the worse than running is when someone just stands there and puts their controller down and is like, okay, kill me. It's like, bro, you know, like, I don't want to, like, I want you to have fun. I'm trying to have fun. I'm not trying to have fun. Like, it's at your expense, yes, but like, you can still like have fun with me, you know? I hate when people give up. And so if you gave them an incentive to just not give up, like, and to also have a good time and reward them with something, I think that would go a long way in making invasions better.
Yeah.
Sure.
And kind of on that, it's the same with any game really. Like in the tournament scene, obviously we do an awful lot of trying to like make sure that rule sets are constructed in such a way. It's all just incentives at the end of the way. How do I incentivize people to have skill, to show their skill, to make it look good, and for them not to be bored off of their ass while doing it? That's the holy trinity of things. And unfortunately, in Souls, with certain things, that last part is probably the biggest killer. Really passive play where everyone's terrified to do anything because they could get like 3-shot is not conducive to a fun gameplay loop, unless the game is set up for you to do that. But just before we move on to DOD for the last question on this, the audience again put in just a couple more questions. I can only take a couple more because we are approaching that 2-hour mark. So get their last couple of questions in. We'll take maybe 3 more than what's already here. And Dodd, please, what would you change about the invasion systems in both Elden Ring and I guess the rest of the series that you've played?
I wouldn't change a whole lot about the rest of the series. I would say specifically with Elden Ring being fresh in our minds and easy to criticize because here we are. I'd echo a lot of the sentiments about covenants just because it gives that kind of incentive. But from a mechanical standpoint, I would say if you're using a Taunter's Tongue, you shouldn't get blues. If you have a summon, you shouldn't get blues. If you have summons, period, those slots should be reserved for reds, period, like co-invaders. That's the only way that you could balance that out, because the idea that they can summon in people who are already over-leveled, and I could make that a complaint that the scaling does not exist for summons and at certain brackets where you just get 2 or 3 shot by them anyway, or they've got infinite amount of health, is ridiculous. Those are already problems, but we know that's not going to get fixed because it hasn't gotten fixed in 12 years. So it's not anything I'm waiting out for, but they should not be able to have blues already fighting their summons, just giving them the advantage of just pouring more and more people. There should be a spot reserved. I also believe in Elden Ring specifically, if you are rune arced as a host, you should be invaded regardless if you have a summon or not. I think that would do wonders for both activity and getting people involved, other than, even at the peak of this game's player count, most players never got invaded.
Yep.
Ever.
That is true, yes. There was some data that apparently like about 5% of the people have only ever did any PvP in Elden Ring.
Which is an insane number in comparison to the rest of the games, because of those things we talked about earlier, having covenant-specific areas or optional areas where you just get invaded. Even Bloodborne had some no-no zones where you would get, invaded immediately.
Yep.
And these are things that were constant in those games, which pulled people into the multiplayer experience. Love it or hate it, it showed them this is a major mechanic of this game. And there's a group of people who are around it, and I think invading people solo to give them that while they're rune arced and have the healing advantage and themselves, skill issue if you lose. I got no sympathy for you, and making it not so handholdy with the fact that they can call in blues at any point they want with the Taunter's Tongue or with the summons. That would be my major complaints. Obviously, fixing the Phantom Finger. Most of the problems I would complain about we've already talked about, but that would be my big one. Give me the activity of solo invasions. And stop giving them blues.
My thing about solo invasions, and the reason that I'm kind of happy that they're gone, I went back the other day and I was like, I've been playing Elden Ring for like a year and a half. I went back the other day and I did invasions in all the other games, and 8 out of 10 in any game, pick the game, don't give a shit. 8 out of 10 disconnect. As soon as I show up, disconnect. And I was like, oh, right. I forgot about this. Like, a person with a friend will try for a minute.
Yeah.
Like, they might still give up, but they'll try. They're not going to disconnect on their friend. They'll disconnect on you because they don't give a shit, right? And this is especially infuriating in Dark Souls 2, where, if you're just minding your own business, some regular guy, and you're like, I'm going to try invasions. I have 5 eyes. I use 1. Now I have 4. Disconnect. I still have 4. That's bullshit. That
Sure.
sucks. That's Ugh, that drives me crazy. But
I would agree. I agree with all that. Those are just player mentalities of being little bitch babies and running away. That's a player problem,
And it's
What
in
I
as
every
opposed to a
game.
mechanic problem.
what
Yeah,
I wouldn't mind is like, and this kind of goes to your other what you're talking about. You want to let me invade a solo host who's rune arced? Fine, but I want the blue to spawn in at the same time as me, if not slightly before, so that solo host is like, oh, I got a buddy. Okay, like something that will incentivize them to like give it a go and not just like every time I invade a solo host, like in any of the older games, it's just like they this dude, God bless him for trying, but like nine times out of 10, he just doesn't stand a chance. There's just nothing he can do.
sure.
Like, and I understand that like at a certain point, like that's kind of the point. But like I also want them to feel like, no, I have a chance. I can win. Like this blue guy showed up and he's gonna help me. Um if we like the idea of solo invasions, like if we tinker around with it a little bit, like where it's not just like, because it just feels like invaders are just like, well, watch what I do to this bitch, you know? And it's like, to me, there's no sport in that.
Well, it depends on this bitch.
That's true.
You know, I mean, when I
Yeah.
get into the world, I get to look at them and decide: are we Bambi, or
Yeah.
or do we think we're really cool? and that's up to the invader. And all of this is player mentality.
Yeah.
My points
Yeah.
are mostly just for the activity of the mechanic. That is all I'm looking for. Is that, because the more I play this, rare as it is, I press that thing and it's searching for invasion, searching for invasion, searching for invasion, and one of us is not even playing, so at least I have the choice to be an asshole to the new man or to do nothing and just stare at the void because I can't get activity.
A lot of that, I remember when Dark Souls 3 was out, right before Ashes of Ariandel came out. I remember sitting down on one of my days off and doing invasions, and I was like, what the hell is going on? I can't find anybody. And it was the first time that it dawned on me, like, people will stop playing this game, right? And I was like, oh, this sucks ass. And then the DLC came out, and I was like, oh shit, everybody's back. Yeah, we're back, let's go. And then the next DLC came out, and even more people were back, and it felt like there were even more people than there were originally, which is something that, like, I know a lot of people are like, there's less activity now. And if you've never been a part of this community, when this DLC comes out, like, you're going to have everybody come back. And another interesting thing that happens is more people that come back are going to stick around.
Yes.
Because that's what happened with Dark Souls 3. It was like, Ring City came out, and now everybody's a fucking PvPer. Everybody's a ganker. Everybody's an invader. And it's a good time. It's fun. I know right now it can seem like it's a little slow, but and I know DOD knows this shit. I'm just saying for the people who don't know it, if you've never been a part of this community before.
Unfortunately, I came into the actual community, the Twitch side, and the people who know the what's what very late, so I never got to experience it, but it has been interesting looking at the numbers, especially around just after the Ring City, even after the Ariandel DLC. It was quite interesting. You see a massive peak, and then it just the numbers just go right back down to what they were. But right after Ring City, the player base not only grew, it stabilized and even continued to grow, albeit very slowly for a very long time afterwards. So hopefully we'll be seeing that again. And the only thing I kind of have to add to this conversation as someone who doesn't add well, who doesn't invade all that much, or add well for that matter, the maths aren't great, is that at this stage, if I was to boot up Dark Souls 2 and have the Blue Acolyte mod, which basically allows me to invade anywhere, or DS3, basically giving you parity with Elden Ring, I am shocked by how quickly I do get invasions, and not all of them are good ones. And if I'm looking for those try-hard ganks, unfortunately, most of them aren't there anymore. They have long gone. But you do get activity, and you have longevity in those systems, which I think is very, very important for any game. Because not only should it be good on release. I think it should last an awful lot longer. I think it could potentially last years. And I think with Dark Souls 2's case especially, given that it's nearly a 10-year-old game now, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's nearly
But-
10.
yeah.
Yeah. And the player
Dark
base...
Souls-
Go on, sorry?
I was gonna say Dark Souls 2 has like some caveats to it where it's like there's no Ember, there's no Rune Arc, there's no humanity.
Mhm.
Like you can just get invaded.
Exactly.
And like, is your boss dead? It doesn't matter. You can still get invaded. So like, that activity is built in.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
Also, the
understand
only game
people-
that came with the arena at base.
Yes. I always laugh about like how I'm actually surprised Elden Ring got Arena as a free add-on instead of DLC. I much prefer that because it's like, please don't. And I don't mean any like disrespect to like people who are into like arena stuff, but like I don't want them spending time developing and working on arenas while they're also working on the game. Like that can be some extra shit in my opinion. Like
Well, thankfully
cool
they
with
don't
that.
pay. Thankfully they don't pay much attention to it, so it's all good.
Well, like that's also true. I did an invasion the other day, and I was in the underground area, like the very start of the underground area in the Mistwood and Siofra or whatever.
Mhm.
And there's like some ruins, and I jumped up on the ruins, and I'm basically on this like 2-dimensional narrow ass bridge with like a 400-foot fall, and one of the phantoms like jumped up there with me, and it was like, all right, and we had a fight, and it was probably the most fun 1v1 I've ever had, and I was like, this should be an arena, like you can't. There's nowhere to run. There's nowhere to go. You have to mind your spacing. You have to mind your step. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I wish that if they were going to do arenas, I wish they would introduce some wild shit like that instead of like, just here's a big circle. Have fun.
Well, unfortunately,
Yeah,
we want
there was
Gone
actually a
Restless.
map like that. Yeah, there was actually a map like that in GS2 arenas.
Yeah.
The bridge
the-
one.
It was a little wide, but yeah, the Dark Souls 2 is a much slower game, and I don't say that with any like I kind of miss the slower stuff, but
For real.
The-
Yeah.
so the bridge being wider, it was okay. Like I still would have shrank it by like 4 pixels on both sides, but the idea of there being like, you can't just run away. I love that. I wish they would do some stuff with that. Like make the arena walls close in around us or something,
Yeah, force the two to engage. But we are just very quickly going to run through the Q&A. And the first message comes in from Nosy Vagabond. Thank you all for being part of Souls. There's no question, just gratitude. You were a nerd. Is all I have to say to that one, Nosy. Aminors had asked ages ago. Hyper Armor and its current implementation in Elden Ring. How does everyone feel about it currently?
I feel like I'm gonna fall asleep.
Yeah, that's yeah. There you go. Well, just very. Does anyone have any thoughts about the current implementation right now? We'll be finishing up very shortly.
The uninstall button got bigger. So.
I like it, but I also like passive poise. Like they're both. I'm cool with either one. Passive poise is like, as long as you'll give me like a means to break it, and I don't have to worry about like the Dark Souls 1, hey, I hit my opponent, they backstabbed me for free. As long as that's not an issue, like I'm okay with passive poise. The problem is Elden Ring, there's a lot of stuff that can do similar damage to a backstab. Like, I poised through what you did and I hit you with my power stance straight swords, or I poised through what you did and I hit you with my moonveil. I like the hyper armor system. I liked it when they did it in Dark Souls 3. It made sense to me. I don't know that you want to reward your players for getting hit. And it's like, oh, I recognize that 81 is bigger than 80. My character sheet says 81. I am rewarded. Like, passive poise. That a part of that has always bothered me. But like, I'm also like, it's kind of fun to play around it. Like, I like it.
And then
But
restless. Oh, sorry. Excuse me.
I dig the hyper armor, and to a point Dodd made earlier, like you're forcing trades when you use a colossal or a greatsword, and your opponent has more heals than you. That's absolutely true and drove me crazy in Dark Souls 3. One of the things that I like about Elden Ring is the fact that since I have the ability to change my Ash of War, I can spec out for that. And now it's like, yeah, go ahead, heal. I'm going to do more damage than you heal, and I'm going to put myself closer to winning. And I think that puts, great swords and colossals in a better spot than they were in Dark Souls 3, where it was like, okay, I won the trade. I hit you twice. You only hit me once, but you have twice the amount of heals that I do. That equation doesn't work out. You're gonna win. Like, so yeah, I like hyper armor. I know a lot of people who played Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 1, they liked passive poise being back, and I also kind of liked it. But if we're gonna do hyper armor, like, okay, I like this, and I feel like hyper armor in Elden Ring, works better than Dark Souls 3, with heavy attacks on great swords having as much hyper armor as they do, and the heavy attacks have almost that Bloodborne level of hyper armor, where with Bloodborne it's legitimate hyper armor, like you're not interrupting that, as opposed to like what armor or super armor, whatever you want to call it, where it's like, oh, you have to hit me twice and then you break it. I like that, and I think they did a better job with that in Elden Ring than they did Dark Souls 3. But that's, either way, I could go.
Either
Passive
way.
poise is fine.
Gotcha.
I got one word, and it's Katars.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know, man. Like, I'm gonna have to respectfully agree to disagree on the whole Elden Ring doing hyper armor better than the 3. Like, don't get me wrong, it's definitely not perfect in 3, but I think there are a lot of instances in which hyper armor in Elden Ring is very oppressive and not a fun mechanic to interact with. Also, I don't play enough Elden Ring to know
But
too much about it. But
you are right.
from what I have
attack,
seen,
a 6-frame attack with 15, with a 15-frame startup is a little bit goofy. Just a smidgen. You can reaction trade forever, and we've seen it in tournaments recently. And I can imagine even in invasions having that keep off me tool is really good. But for the sake of time and getting to a couple more questions, I am very, very quickly going to move over to Restless. Just quick thoughts on the current hyper armor implementation, Restless?
I'll have to agree with what everyone said before me.
Mm-hmm.
It is a concept, it's fine, but the current implementation is, to put it mildly, it's far from ideal. Like a lot of the hyper armor attacks get the hyper armor frames way too early, and it doesn't feel intuitive like it did in DS3. Like it doesn't feel like there's any kind of hierarchy, as Omi pointed out.
Yeah.
So a CGS, for example, can hyper armor Loretta Slash. That doesn't feel natural. That doesn't feel that this interaction should happen this way. So I think they'll have to tune that a lot in the future patches.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Very, very quickly, go for it.
I was going to ask, if any of you played Dark Souls 3 before Ashes of Ariandel, hyper armor in Dark Souls 3 worked very much like what Elden Ring does now. But it's interesting because in that time, at Dark Souls 3, the Dark Souls 2 players and the Dark Souls 1 players were mad because they didn't have poise. They didn't have passive poise. And so no one understood what was happening, and everybody assumed that passive poise, well, they assumed poise at all was nothing, that it didn't do anything. It just wasn't behaving the same way that it had behaved before. And
there were a lot of misconceptions in that time. Yes, there was a lot, which the smart people tried to fight back against, but it was not working.
It's funny now that it's the Dark Souls 3 hyper armor, the people who came into post Ashes Dark Souls 3, and they were accustomed to that hyper armor for however long. Now Elden Ring is like, hey, here it is again. It's slightly different, and everyone's like, don't get me wrong, like the curved greatswords are fucking like what. I don't disagree with that. Like there are things I think that they could tune up, but like the system itself, like I like it. You don't need a lot of poise to have hyper armor, so you know you're free to like, and you're rewarded for knowing like I have 40 poise and a great sword. That straight sword's not going to stop me from swinging, so I'm going to swing. And you're rewarded for pressing the attack button and not just looking at your character's screen and saying like this number's big, and I appreciate that.
So for
Well,
the
at least we don't have to deal with
last-
shockwaves anymore. We could all agree on that. That's nice.
So
Yeah.
unfortunately for the last question, because we have gone a little bit over time, you know, it does happen.
Just a wee bit.
Just a smidgen. Marissa has asked, what keeps the invaders coming back? And I think that's a good position to a good point to end it. And for all the questions we didn't get to, sorry about that, folks. We might take a look at them again, though. So yeah, what keeps the invaders coming back then? Just a very quick thought.
Autism.
That's I don't think you're
A little
wrong.
bit more.
All I got to say.
That's a bit more loose than I'd put it. But yeah, host dies, dopamine rush, can't make it in Tekken.
That works.
That's how I'd sum that.
It's
Honestly,
like,
I would say it's just that there is nothing like the invasions in Souls-like games, nothing else like that on the market, which is why a lot of us put big hopes up for the upcoming titles like Lords of the Fallen that will maybe force From Software and Bandai Namco to respect their competition and think more about making their games appealing to the PvP crowd.
I agree exactly in the opposite direction. Like, there's no other game where I can do this in, and this is the only game that like I care enough to do it in. Like, I love the mechanic of just showing up. I've wanted this mechanic since I played Final Fantasy Tactics. Like, to just be able to go fight my friend with my units, not special units, just generic units versus his generic units. I thought that would be like the coolest thing in the world, and now you can do that, and it's in this game, and like it will never stop being an RPG to me. So like it's an RPG where I can do that. Like, I understand that there's this competitive side, and obviously it's more fun to win, but like 100-hour-long RPG where I can make a guy and go fight some other guy, that rules. And there's just nothing you can do to make me not do it, basically.
Yep,
I'll do it for as long as it's a mechanic.
Well, again,
Yeah.
but Sarah, you can finish your thoughts, Sarah. And then
Just one more thought. I was just a brief summary of what we've just talked about. You know, Dark Souls, it's like this niche thing, and you can't really get a similar experience anywhere else. You know, special interests, autism. You know, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, you're not wrong in
wrap
that
this up.
respect anyway. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank all of my guests here. The Dropout Dragon, thank you so much. Restless, Mind, Saratoga, and Saint Riot. Dropout, how can people find you?
They can't. I'm a dead stream. Don't worry about it.
Washed Up
You
Dragon.
can find me
for real.
They can find me on Twitch with the Dropout Dragon. I do upload to YouTube, but not often. It's mostly just clips of big haha and me pretending that I'm competent in the game. That's about it.
And some of them believe it. The fools. Restless.
I know.
How can people find you?
Well, I've been streaming quite regularly lately. My channel is restless _mind. Something that people sometimes miss out on is that I do have 2 underscores.
Well, please do follow Restless Mind. Sarah, where can they cyberstalk you?
I don't know. Preferably don't. But if you're really feeling so inclined, then I stream sometimes on Twitch. With my handle is Sara_Toga, and that is also where I am on YouTube. So
Go do it. The YouTube, some of those YouTube videos are absolutely hilarious. You should, for real, go check them out. And Saint, I know it under normal circumstances you need no introduction, but or no, it's not an introduction. Never mind. Where can people find you? Where are you most active? What are you doing at the moment? And
on Twitch, just Saint Riot. On YouTube, Saint_Riot. Right now I'm playing an indie game called Sea of Stars, and surprise, it's an RPG. Once I'm finished with that, I have been absolutely loving Armored Core, so I'll keep doing that. But I've also started making. I've just finished one build in Elden Ring, and I've started work on another build. My content is 99.9% like from software stuff. But occasionally I do play games with pixel art and campfire cooking. So if I'm doing that, yeah.
Phenomenal stuff. Well, again, thank you to all of my guests. You've all been phenomenal. And ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all shortly. Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you so much for